All right, let's talk about Agentic AI. There's a ton of hype out there, right? We're going to cut right through it. What you need is a real practical roadmap. And that's exactly what we have for you today, a 7-step plan for developers that'll take you from zero to production. Let's get into it.
You're a developer, right? So you're seeing this agentic AI stuff everywhere. It feels like the future for sure. But man, it's also just chaos. A new framework drops every week. The real question isn't just what is an AI agent? It's how do I actually build one? A good one, something I can actually ship to users without it falling apart. And yeah, that can feel pretty overwhelming.
So, how do you handle that chaos? You need a plan, a solid framework. And that's what this is. We've boiled down the entire messy process into 7 clear steps. This is your guide. This is how you cut through all that noise and actually build the skills that matter.
So here's a quick look at where we're headed. We'll kick things off with the foundation, then get into orchestrating agents, level up with some advanced techniques, and then, super important, talk about getting your code into production. And we'll wrap up by looking at what this all means for you.
All right, first things first, we've got to lay the foundation. These first couple of steps are non-negotiable. Seriously, it's like building a house. If you skimp on the foundation, the whole thing is going to come crashing down later. You just can't skip this part.
So step 1 is really about getting the fundamentals down. Like, how do you even talk to an LLM effectively? What are the basic patterns that make these agents tick? Then, once we've got that, step 2 is all about adding the pieces that make your agent actually smart and, useful.
And one of those fundamental patterns is React. This is an absolute game changer. You have to know this. Think about it. A standard LLM is kind of stuck in the past, right? Its knowledge is frozen. React is what gives it access to the now. It lets the model use tools like a Google search to get up-to-the-minute info. It's a loop. The model reasons about what it needs, takes an action with a tool, and then observes the result. Reason, act, observe. It's simple, but it's how you connect your agent to the real world. So powerful. Okay, so our agent can do things now. That's great. But if it forgets everything the second you're done talking, it's not very useful, is it? It's basically just a glorified script. That's where step 2 comes in. We have to give it a memory. Memory is what turns it from a one-off tool into a real continuous partner.
And when we talk about memory, there are really 3 main types to think about. First, you've got your short-term memory, just for the conversation you're having right now. Then there's external memory, where you save stuff to a database so you can pick up where you left off later. And then there's the really cool stuff, long-term memory. This is where the agent builds a persistent knowledge base and actually starts to remember you and what you've talked about before. That's where the magic happens.
And this really gets to the heart of what we call context engineering. I love this quote from Krishnaik. It's not just having memory, it's about what you put in that memory. You've heard it a million times, garbage in, garbage out. It has never been more true than with these models. Providing high-quality, relevant information is literally the difference between an agent that's frustrating to use and one that feels, amazing.
Okay, let's level up. We're on to step 3, orchestration. This is where we go from a single, simple agent to building complex systems with multiple agents working together. If you want to build anything truly powerful and scalable, you absolutely need to understand this.
Look, once things get complex, you can't just wing it with a bunch of if statements. You need proper tools. And this is where something like LangGraph becomes your best friend. It lets you map out your entire agent's workflow as a graph, with nodes and edges. Each node can be a tool or a call to an LLM or whatever. It's a much better way to manage all the different states and decision points in a complex, multi-step process.
And once you start orchestrating, you can build some really powerful setups. Imagine having a supervisor agent whose only job is to break down a big problem and hand out smaller tasks to a team of worker agents, each with its own specialty. Or, and this is super important, you can build in a human in the loop, like an approval step where the agent has to stop and get a yes from a real person before doing something critical. The key takeaway here is that you are still the architect. You're in control.
All right, so our foundation is solid. We know how to orchestrate complex tasks. Now it's time for the really fun stuff, the advanced techniques. Steps 4 and 5, this is what's going to take you from just being competent to being a real expert in this space.
Step 4 is all about RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. This is a huge one. How do you get your agent to know things about your company's private data, the stuff that's not on the public internet? Fine-tuning a whole model is super expensive. RAG is the answer. It's a technique where the agent first retrieves relevant documents from your knowledge base and then feeds that information to the LLM as context to generate an answer. It's brilliant. And, this space is moving crazy fast. For a while, RAG pretty much always meant using a vector database, and they're great for what they do, finding semantically similar stuff in a huge pile of text. But now we're seeing new ideas, like vectorless RAG. It's a totally different approach that uses the LLM itself to navigate your data, kind of like a tree. It might not be for every use case, but for more structured data, it could be a perfect fit, and it means one less database you have to manage in your stack, which is always nice.
Then we get to step 5, which is all about design patterns. This is where you really start to think like an architect. You start using patterns like a router agent, which is basically a smart traffic controller that sends the user's request to the right tool for the job. Or, one of my favorites, the reflection agent. This is an agent that literally critiques its own work and tries again to make it better. It's an incredible way to boost the quality and reliability of your agent's output.
Okay, we're in the home stretch. And this is probably the most important part of the whole journey. We've written all this amazing code. Now, how do we get it out into the real world? How do we ship it? That's what steps 6 and 7 are all about.
So this part has 2 big pieces. Step 6 is our pre-flight check. Is the agent safe? Is it reliable? Does it actually do what we think it does? Then step 7 is liftoff, actually deploying it and dealing with all the real-world problems that come with running it live.
And let me be super clear about this. Safety is not a nice to have. It's a must. You have to build in guardrails. We're talking about things like making sure it doesn't leak personally identifiable information or PII, validating its outputs, and protecting against prompt injections. That's basically when a user tries to trick your agent into doing something it's not supposed to do. You have to be ready for that. And look, once you hit deploy, the work isn't over. In a lot of ways, it's just beginning. Welcome to production ops for AI. You're going to be worried about latency. No one wants a slow agent. You're going to be watching costs like a hawk, because every LLM call adds up. You'll need great observability to figure out what's going on when things break. And you have to do all of this on a major cloud platform, whether it's AWS, Azure, or Vertex AI. This is the real-world engineering of it all.
Whew, okay, that was a lot, I know. So let's just do a super quick flyby of the whole roadmap one more time to make sure it all sticks. And there it is, the whole 7-step roadmap. You start with the fundamentals, the LLMs and React pattern. Then you add the core components, memory and context. You level up with orchestration using tools like LangGraph. You master advanced data retrieval with RAG, and then you start using expert-level design patterns. And finally, you wrap it all up with a focus on safety, evaluation, and getting it all running in production. This is it. This is how you go from a script on your laptop to a real-world application.